Hi, my name is Gary, and for my AP Chemistry final, I did an experiment on household fire retardants. This is basically items that you can just find around your house that can be used to take out fires. And I was helped by my sister, Angel Hall. So basically, the whole point of this experiment is testing how effective household items could work as fire retardants on different kind of flammable items that you'd find around your house. And basically I used different items because there's a lot of items around your house that could be potentially flammable. The three main ones that I used was cloth, paper, and a dry material. So basically stuff inside of your house, something outside of your house, if you have something dry, if you have grass, stuff like that. And because we live in Sonoma County, which is basically a wine or fire country, I basically came up with the idea of testing how to stop or slow flames from my sister, who when she was in your class, made a fire tornado. I did help her a little bit with that, and I thought it would be really cool just to test it out. I think this can be really beneficial for people that have a high risk in their homes and they don't want their house to burn down. Of course, these items are used in very small amounts. You would need a lot to get rid of a big fire, but little fires, smaller ones, anything can help with it. So basically, my main question is, can household items be used to diminish or slow down a fire, acting as a fire retardant? And if so, which one would work best? So I used a couple items as well. So the materials that you're going to need, a couple flammable items that can be found around your house, is cloth. I used polyester, which was like basically a sock. You can use whatever kind of cloth. I think it's really okay as long as you use 3 different items, that all have a different burning time. I also used a dry plant material, so I used moss. In this case, you can find it on a tree, stuff like that. And then I also used paper. Paper is found literally everywhere around your house, and it's a super flammable item, and it burns super fast. So I think that was a big one. Then for your household fire retardants, I used borax. Borax is used for a lot of things, mainly cleaning, and baking soda as well. I'm pretty sure baking soda is used in a lot of with firefighters. I'm pretty sure they use it in the airplanes that pass by. Pretty sure it's mixed between sand, baking soda, and something else that I'm missing. But yeah, I basically use those two because they're easy items. Most people have them, especially baking soda. And then the objects, other than those two that I had to use an alcoholic gel just to get the fire started because there was a lot of wind at that time. And that basically just got the fire going. I used a metal bowl to put the stuff inside of it. That way it wouldn't go everywhere and it would stay contained. And I used a blowtorch, but you can use a lighter. It's kind of like the same thing. And as long as you use the same kind of items for each one, it should be fine. So my hypothesis was that I think that the baking soda will act as a better fire retardant because it's definitely more dense, not as itself, like a single grain of baking soda versus a single grain of borax. I think borax is more dense, but baking soda as a group itself is a lot more powdery, and I think that would act better as a fire retardant because it would cut off more oxygen, leaving less holes. So yeah, as I was saying, it basically leaves less holes, and it's more of like a powdered substance, and I think it would cut off the oxygen to the fire itself because oxygen is a major thing that has to do with the fires. It kind of fuels it itself as long as it has it. Alright, so the procedure for this: number 1, you're going to want to place your first flammable item into the bowl with a teaspoon of alcohol gel on it. I used just the teaspoon. I thought it would do a lot more than it did, but it didn't. But it did get the fire just like started itself. Um, then you're gonna want to light it on the gel and time till it burns out. I also use the gel and I kind of smushed it around the surface of whatever I use. So the moss, I would smush it around there. The sock itself, I would rub it around it, and as well as the paper itself. So you're going to want to do this for all three of the items. You're going to want to time it just so you can get all three of the times without the fire retardant, so that way you know if it works or not. Then once you do that, you're going to want to place another flammable item. So let's just say you use paper. You're going to want to light it the exact same way, and then you're going to pinch borax and you're going to sprinkle it onto the fire where the fire is. Don't put it over the places where it's not burned. You want to do the places that it is burned currently. Basically, yeah, you just kind of want to sprinkle it all over. You're going to want to do that for every single item, all three. Then you're going to redo step 4. So you're going to place another flammable item into the bowl, light it the exact same way, and instead you're going to pinch baking soda and sprinkle it onto the fire. Once again, you do not want to put it over places that aren't there, because it's not going to stop the fire. The point of it is to suffocate the fire and try to get rid of it, not hold a line for it. Once you do that, you're going to make sure that you time when the fire goes out and how many pinches it took too. You want to do both of those because you don't want to have different amounts of borax or different amounts of baking soda. And you're going to record all that data into a data table itself. Alright, so this was my data table with no retardant. The cloth or the sock, polyester, took around 5 minutes to actually go out. Probably because it's more dense than the other ones. Then for the moss, the dry plant, was actually 2 minutes. And I tried to make them all the same size and tried to make them all the same weight. They were all around the same weight, all around the same size, so I think it was pretty accurate. But the moss definitely has a lot more holes in it, so I think it was harder to travel the fire to travel itself, because it had to go through each line of it. Like the paper only took 1 minute and 15 seconds, and that's because the fire just kept going. It didn't have to jump from place to place. It kind of just had its constant use of fuel. So then I pinched the borax on top of the cloth or the polyester. This took around 24 seconds and 6 pinches. So right here, I actually thought my hypothesis was completely wrong. I was like, wow, that was kind of fast considering polyester usually burned for 5 minutes before that. So I was like, oh, well, that sucks, but it is what it is. Then for the moss, it actually took 1 minute and 5 seconds and 15 pinches. I think this was mainly because there's so many holes in moss that whenever I sprinkled it, only some went on the fire and some just went straight through. So then I used paper, and that took 1 minute and 35 seconds, and that's a full sheet of paper, and 25 pinches, which I was actually surprised by because I thought it'd be a lot less. But because of the fire, it was burning so fast through the paper, I had to constantly be keeping up with it and pinching it right on top of it. So then we have the baking soda. For the cloth, it only took 24 seconds and 9 pinches, which was really close to the borax. So once again, I was like, oh, I'm probably wrong and it's probably going to take more. But then the next one, this was a huge one. For the moss, it only took 25 seconds and 8 pinches to immediately go out. And I mean, it was pretty crazy because I thought that it would take a lot longer, be close to the borax. Because of the first one was so close, 6, 9, and 24, 24. I was expecting the same thing to be around 1 minute, but it only took 25 seconds, probably because of how condensed it was. And more places can go on the fire because it's not crystallized. Then for the paper, it only took 16 seconds and 9 pinches. So at that point, I was like, well, I guess my hypothesis was right in the end. This is definitely because it definitely suffocates the fire a lot more, and it has more to go on top of. And it's kind of interesting because the borax actually made it go faster than the no retardant at all on paper. And that was weird because I was thinking, like, maybe every single time that I pinched a little bit of borax on it, the flame would get more clear because it's windy outside. You can't really see the flame, but you know that it's burning. Right when I pinched the borax, it would go and it would react, and the flame would become more dominant, and you would be able to see it. But yeah. So here are the graphs that I also used. So we have the fire times in seconds. So we have 302, 24, 24, 124, 65, 25, 75, 95, and 16. That's for the cloth, the moss, and the paper. So most of these, it's kind of like in order. Of course, the blue one's going to be higher. Surprisingly, the paper, of course, the second one was higher than the first one. But usually blue was on top. And then navy blue was usually above purple, which was all four of them, except for the cloth, which was still super close. But basically, the baking soda definitely had the lowest times. And then the number of pinches, the first one was 6 and 9. The second one was 15 and 8. And the third one was 25 and 9. So I still think the baking soda definitely took the win because it was close on the cloth one, but it easily took the other two by time and pinches. So I think that baking soda was definitely more useful. So here for the conclusion, the baking soda was the clear winner in fire retardant, and it's pretty effective as well. Once again, I'm pretty sure they used it in fire extinguishers and the fire retardant itself, mixed with other stuff, of course. Just because of how dense it is as a collective, I think it cut off a lot more oxygen to it. And while borax kind of like, I don't think it enhanced the fire, but it made it a little bit bigger while taking it out and diminishing it. And borax kind of slowed it down, but didn't take it out as much as baking soda did. Paper burns much faster than the other objects just because, once again, I think it was because it had a continuous sense of fuel. And it didn't have to jump from spot to spot to spot like it did on the cloth or it did on the moss. And polyester burns very slow. It takes a lot more to take it out. And I'm pretty sure that's because of how dense it is. Just because it has to burn through a lot of thread. And it's not as thin as like paper or moss itself. So here I have a demonstration. I'll just show a couple seconds of it of what me and my sister did. I'm basically sprinkling borax onto the paper, which is on fire, of course, which was the gel. This is the same procedure for the baking soda and same for each type of flammable object. I'm basically counting how many pinches it takes and the time which it starts and goes out. So right here we can see she's gonna light it on the gel itself. It's gonna start the fire. Boom. Now as you can see, the fire's small, and then right there, right when I sprinkle the borax on top of it, it actually becomes more dominant. And I still think that it still goes out decently fast. And I just keep sprinkling on it because I see more ashes, more places that a fire could start. And I'm not spraying it on random places. I'm spraying it right on top of the fire, and it's still going. So that was like one of the main things. I was like, borax is kind of like, it slows it down, but it doesn't really take it out itself. So yeah. Basically, that's kind of the whole experiment. Once again, I think this can be super beneficial to people who don't really know what to do when there's a fire around. Of course, people should have fire extinguishers, but if they don't, liquid's always an option. But hey, baking soda also works too. If you want to slow something down, borax could work as well, whatever you have there, to be honest. Also, a major thing that was kind of an uncontrolled variable at first was the wind. Now, wind, at first I was going to do it without wind, but then I kind of realized like fire is a major, it has a higher destruction rate when there's a lot of wind around because it kind of pushes the fire onto other places that it can use for fuel. So wind actually, I kind of used it as a variable that could help the experiment rather than something I can't control, even though I can't control it, but it still would help. A couple things that I definitely could have done better. I should have done more attempts on each one. Like maybe I should have burned the paper 6 times instead of 3 times or 4 times. And maybe I could have used a fan instead just so I could have a continuous use of burning. And it's the same for each one. But basically, yeah, that's my experiment. Thank you.